Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Oh, I think we might have had a mix up on the times here for the start time, but it's going to be starting at 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. We had it set for 7 Central. So if we have any people joining us later, we will jump to it. But let me just send a quick reminder. Just a moment. Hmm. Okay, well, let's get started. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about the 100K Optical series, systems that scale in any location. So if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. My name is Dr. Fallon Patel. I'm an optometrist in the Greater Toronto area, and I am your host for the Optical Accelerator series. We've been hosting these monthly for the last 8 or 10 sessions now. We've always had a really good turnout for these. We might have had a mix up on our times today. So it said 7 Central, but it's actually 7 Eastern. But you can get a recording of this afterwards with the notes as well. So there will be a handout or a worksheet that will follow today's sessions. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop me. And so I guess my expertise, you might be wondering who I am. So I operate 5 clinics beside Lens Crafters. I've been in practice for over 15 years. And, there's a thing or two we've learned about managing teams and how to grow our practices year over year. So if you're here to learn about that, you'll definitely get some great insights. So let's begin the 100K Optical series. All right. So the first topic here, so we're going to be talking about the 100K optical. So how high performing opticals create repeatable growth. Now, this isn't an easy thing to be able to generate, net new revenue yearly, and how to be able to continue to do that yearly is also quite a challenge. And so that's something that we all face as clinic owners, optical owners, practice owners is how do you keep that momentum growing, right? Each year you have to deliver some sort of percentage growth. If not, the business halts, and that's when you run into trouble. As expenses are always climbing year over year, wages are going up, expenses for even products, profitability, your margins get tighter and tighter. So how do you find a way to increase that sale? So for today's topic, I thought let's make it simple for everybody. Let's set a goal. So goals always work well. You need to have a number in your mind. And if you don't have a number and you're just hoping to grow, what's going to happen is you're probably just going to spin in the same spot year after year. So you really need to pull yourself out and think about, what is a goal that I'm going to work towards? And you have to put a timeline on it. So let's say from today going forward in 1 year, maybe 6 months, depending on how well your optical is doing, how are we going to get you that extra 100K in optical revenue? And how are we going to do that today? So, and we're going to do that by showing you how to do it through high performing opticals that create repeatable growth. So the scale and framework here, today we're going to talk about a framework called scale. So this now becomes our core teaching model of how we're going to accomplish that. So we're going to start with the letter S. And again, you'll get some handouts after. Samantha will be emailing them to you. They'll also be posted on the webinar postings. So if you're looking for that, there's a really nice worksheet that you can go through with this. And it's not just framework for what we're talking about today, but it can be a framework if you apply it to pretty much how I teach is principle based. So whatever we're teaching can be easily replicated, and once you get the format down, can be applied to another idea or project that you may have in your practice. So let's begin. So the first letter is the S. So the S is going to stand for simplify decisions. So that's where we're always going to begin with. The core idea here is you want to refuse confusion. So reducing confusion. To reduce confusion increases your confidence, right? Patients don't struggle with choices, they struggle with unclear choices. So here's the problem we see day and day and again. Many opticals unintentionally create overwhelm. There's too many products, there's too many technical terms, there's too much comparison without guidance from a team member. And when patients feel uncertain, they delay or they walk out the door. So you have to think about that. How can I make this simple? So a confused patient, they delay. So confusion creates really that hesitation. So as soon as you get that pause and you see that someone's no longer with you, you kind of get that feeling no longer is really following around with you. They'll give you responses like, I'll think about it. Just give me the basic one, delayed purchase decision fatigue. This is because perhaps we didn't connect properly when we were explaining it, even though we explain it the same way for every patient. Somehow, maybe we weren't paying attention to our gestures, our physical cues. Did we make eye contact? Were we smiling? Were we connected to that other human being, right? So there's a lot that goes into this. And if you are not first and foremost providing clear information, and providing and having that connection with someone, you're often going to get those responses from them. And so friction leads to leakage, is what we explain or what we talk about. And one way to do this is one way to clarify your message. We do this in our practice. We just have like one. We have one where we have good or better. In opticals, you can have good, better, or best, right? You can give them three options. But we went over this in the first set of webinars, and a lot of what we're going to package up today is going through all of the webinars we've had, kind of summarizing, what it is that you're looking to scale, how we're going to do this. And so we talked about how do you package, let's say like a lens option into a good, better, and best package. Maybe you'll have like a premium AR, the top notch in your best package. You might have a medium kind of progressive lens, medium coatings in your better package, and you may just have the basic or no coatings or a minimal in your good package. When you kind of make it clear so that the patient understands the outcome and you're giving them a graded scale, it will resonate with them. Versus if you're going to speak to them about all the different terms and technologies, it can become overwhelming and it'll just go over their head, right? Because there's too many options. And we call it analysis paralysis. When you have too many options, you freeze and you just don't take action, right? So organized options really create confidence in how you're communicating. It's simpler, it's easier to deliver. And the goal here is not limiting choice. The goal is simplifying those decisions, right? So we don't want to really limit that, not at all. We want to make it easier because we want to be able to guide someone into their different options that we would have for them. So, and we went through these in our previous seminars as well as how do we uncover that? How do we have those conversations? We start to have lifestyle conversations, right? We ask questions like, do you use any screen use? How about night driving? How's that? Do you have any troubles with night driving? What do you do outside of work? Do you have any active lifestyle? Do you play any sports? Any recreational hobbies? How many devices are you using? Are you using a lot? Does that bother you? These are the types of questions that you want to start with in order to uncover someone's needs, right? So you want to start with lifestyle questions. And I think everybody kind of knows this, but again, I'm going to repeat it so that it's a fresh reminder. A part of coaching is always revisiting things that we know and to find out ways that we can do things better. And so, of course, we want to start with those lifestyle options. You don't start with the recommendation of the different products that we have first, right? Because you're trying to mirror and match what it is that's their problem to the solution that you would have in your clinics. So the next letter is C, and for this stands for coaching teams. So the core idea here is high performing opticals do not rely on star performers. They coach repeatable behaviors. And this is really important. So you need to be able to find someone in your clinic who can kind of coach everyone. You can't rely on that one superstar because what happens, and we've talked about this over and over again, is when that one superstar leaves, your whole store tanks or your optical or your practice tanks. So you need to be able to have that ability to coach repeatable behaviors. And so that it's across the entire organization set as a standard, right? So that's what we're trying to create. And so here are here's a talk track for that. So the strongest opticals are not powered by personality, they are powered by preparation. And so you have to really invest in training, right? You need to book some time to have dinners or off hours to, if you're thinking of launching a new product line, how are you going to do that? Where is the training? Are you going to be able to have a Q&A session to answer all the questions? How are we going to deliver this coaching program? And whenever you do this, you have to make sure that you are consistently following up. And so that's where the consistency beats talent any day of the week. So you can have somebody who's super talented and you've heard this probably in a lot of mentorship coaching, or if you listen to any mentors in the industry, they will say consistency beats talent any day of the week. Because you know what happens with talent? Sometimes if they're motivated, if they're demotivated, they don't perform. When they're motivated, they perform. But someone who is consistently consistent will always outbeat someone who's overly motivated or someone who's excited, for example, or highly engaged. These are good behaviors, but you need to make sure that they're also consistent. So consistency beats talent any day. And the coaching gap here. So different staff should not create different experiences. And this is what we mean. So we, as our organization, we like to try to create a consistency. So when someone's coming into any one of our clinics, seeing any one of our staff, we really want to make sure that experience, or at least that process, is consistent. And so imagine if we were talking about your different good, better, best options, right? Now imagine you have two employees. You have employee number one, optician number one, who's really good at discussing. They'll go right to the premium discussion, right? Because you've trained them that way. Or maybe let's just say you didn't train them, right? So what happens when you don't train them? Optician A, superstar, is going to recommend the best option because they're comfortable, they're confident, they're just that go-getter. Versus optician B, they might just go for the basic only. Like, I think this is all you need because they've lacked coaching. They have some sort of insecurity. They feel guilt around charging someone more money. They feel bad about their product. So internally, they'll just, throw away or turn down that option for the patient without even asking them. And I think this is a very big disservice to your patients. Some patients, really will get upset if you're not giving them all the options. And this has happened to me, a personal story I will share, where I had a friend, a close family friend of mine. She knows I'm very well versed in myopia management, and I do a whole lot of ortho K and all this stuff. She was seeing a doctor in another city, who her son, and again, only son. So mom is very, on top of her son's health. She's very involved in his activities, and so she would take him to his eye exams. So this optometrist had recommended Stellus glasses, which is perfectly fine to do. Right, she recommended it. Now, when the child was progressing, she didn't give the other option of trying something different. She never even gave the option that there are contact lenses out there on the market that are also very good and that may be better at controlling myopia better than glasses, right? So we're not comparing Stellas, but we're comparing contacts versus glasses. And there's literature out there that supports that. And so she said to the doctor, after it's progressing, one day she said, well, why didn't you, my friend, so we have another friend who's in Ortho K, and they talk, these two friends of ours. And so, and then, our other friend, her daughter's been in Ortho K since she was little, best thing of her life. So now this mom is really upset, and she felt that this optometrist did not share the best option for her because she felt like because she wasn't going to the appointments dressed up, she felt that the doctor judged her based on her, lack of, attire going to these appointments. Meanwhile, these people are they have the means and the funds to do it, but she just felt very, very upset. And she came to us to me, and to share that story with me. And I felt really bad because I felt like, oh, that optometrist probably didn't do the wrong thing. She just probably was not comfortable sharing, the best options that are out there for kids, even if she may not feel comfortable taking these kids in. And so what a story. But anywho, what I'm trying to say here is that you really cannot, you really cannot kind of, what's the word, judge somebody by how they look or how they appear. You have to really get to when you're doing recommendations, start with the best for every single person. You can't judge them. So, and if you have a process in place, this will never happen in your clinic, right? So you'll never have somebody recommended something completely different versus what you've trained them to do. And so this is where coaching gaps exist. And these are the gaps that you want to make sure if you're thinking about it, nodding your head, it happens in your clinic. It happens in mine too. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Usually when there's a new staff or a new rollout of a new program, it takes a bit to get all the nicks out and get everybody onboarded. But you have to make sure that when you establish these protocols, that you're also following up and you're continuously training. Because here you can see that same patient need, right, ended up with a different result. And that's bonkers to me, right? It's like someone's going for a marathon and they ended up with, completely wrong shoe size or shoe style because of price or because they weren't educated in the right path. So just something to keep in mind. All right. And the next thing is this is what we shared is like weekly coaching. You need to, and if you're finding it too much for yourself, I would recommend that you kind of have someone who's good in your either sales or operations, that they are going around and holding your team accountable, spot checking, and retraining your team, right? So continuous training and coaching is very, very important. And so that confidence is coached, right? So once you do something, and we talked about cultivating confidence on our last couple webinars. And what is that? How do you do that? It's repetition. It's through doing an action that was unknown once and then over and over again. Once you've experienced it, you become confident in it. But when it's in the unknown in the future, if you're asking someone to do something different, they will react not in the best way, right? They might even avoid it. So you as a coach need to kind of role play with them, get it out of them so that they feel comfortable, coach them, hold them accountable, make them uncomfortable because anything new and unknown is very uncomfortable. And often, the fear of failure comes up, the fear of not doing it right comes up, and that's okay. When you feel those things, that means you're moving in the right direction. And so this is how confidence is coached. You really just pick one skill, you role play it. You have to provide feedback on the moment. So we call it spot coaching or spot training, and then focus on an area that you can improve, right? One improvement. So here's another aspect is handoff coaching. So if you're working with a doctor in your optical, you should have these discussions with your OD because the handoff is super critical in what gets communicated. And so if you have somebody who's conducting your eye exam, a doctor you might be kind of commissioning into your optical, or if you're working in a practice, if their handoff is just, here you go see somebody there in the optical. Okay. That's optometrist A versus optometrist B might have a connection. It might say, John works on screens all day and struggles with fatigue. Susie, can you help them with a computerized progressive lens? That's very different. Like you're treating and you're helping your customer versus just saying, go take a look next door. Right. So the more specific in that handoff, the better the outcome for you. So this is very important. If you don't have a relationship with, let's say, the doctors are sending you patients or in the optical, if you're lucky to work with one thing that we often see is that anybody new, they're recommended to get an eye exam with us, one of our doctors, so that they have built that rapport, that connection. They feel comfortable recommending the eye exam and vice versa backwards. Like we've made a connection. I feel comfortable handing my patient to, let's say, Susie, for example. So I think that's really important. If you haven't, maybe pick somebody in your area or your network that often sends you the most patients. Maybe go get an eye exam with them. I think it's really, really important to build that connection, and that way you can have a better conversation with the OD you're working with. So better handoffs create stronger outcomes for sure. The next letter is A in scale. So A, align workflows. So you want to design that patient journey intentionally, right? You want to think about what is the first point in contact with that patient into your practice, and then what does it look like to the point they become one of your patients? And the optical experience begins really before that dispensing, right? It comes when they're calling your office, maybe looking you up on the website. There's all sorts of pre dispositions to this patient journey. And so that patient confidence starts long before the recommendation. So it starts with flow. And I'm consistently always auditing this in our practice. I sat down with a new marketing agency we just signed on with, and he asked me to go through this patient journey. What's the first encounter? Then what happens next? Then what happens next? What are the communication? What are the patient reminder protocols? What is it? So we can map it out because each touch point matters. And it can't sound robotic. It needs to sound very engaging. People need to feel that there's some sort of connection. Even though we use ChatGPT a lot, especially in our texts and things like that, we want to make sure that we are providing some sort of human element along that way. So the patient journey. So experience should feel guided. And guided through somebody, another human, right? So you have the eye exam or the appointment booking, then you have the eye exam, then there's the handoff. Then there's the lifestyle recommendation questions that you're going to ask. Then you're going to match it to a recommendation of your product solution, right? Until they make that decision. Yes, this is what I need. Yes, this is what is good for me. So there's a lot of processes here, and we should really be mapping it out. Some people know exactly their sales cycle. Some people know exactly their patient journey. Some people know exactly, how many interactions it takes to take a customer to a moving, decision-making factor. So this is what it takes really if you want to, elevate your practice to the next level. Or I think just look at it, try to map it out, sit through it for a day, and see where you think you can improve in any one of those situations. Is it the handoff? Did the doctor, do you not really have a rapport with somebody in the community better? Maybe you can revisit that part. Lifestyle recommendations. Is everybody trained, coached to recommend based on lifestyle? And do you have like a list of questions that everybody knows how to, like starter questions maybe, in your optical? And then do you have the better, best, or the good, better, best packages or good or best package to make it more clear for patients based on the recommendation? Like these are the steps it takes to be able to get that patient to make that decision. So we were on the next letter. So aligning the team. So workflow friction. So small frictions along this patient journey can really create big leakages. So what happens is that patient is then waiting. They have unclear transitions. They're restarting conversations, poor merchandising, inconsistent processes. So think about all these things to your process in your practice. Are these things happening? And they're happening because they're happening to all of us, right? There's always room for improvement. This is what I love. Like, if you feel that everything's perfect, you're not looking at it right properly enough. You need to have a new set of eyes, maybe bring somebody else in to be like, hey, can you go through this process and tell me what we can improve on, what we can do better, right? So our job is really always trying to comb through things with a fine hairbrush and find ways to improve and move the needle. Improve and move, find opportunity, improve and move the needle. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about workflow. This is really operations, is what we're thinking. So the environment also matters in this, right? In terms of that patient journey, are things laid out so that it makes sense, right? So the optical should guide the decisions as well. So as soon as a patient comes in for an glasses selection, or they leave the doctor's office, are they walking into the dispensary first, right? Versus if they're walking to the front desk, they might just check out and boot the door. So you just have to think about where things are situated in your optical as well. And the optical should really help guide those decisions. Do you have stuff to show them about lifestyle, right? Maybe there's a cycling display or a biking display for the Oakleys, or I don't know, meta glasses display for somebody who's on the screens and, more techie. So different things. Are the visual cues and needs, do you have proper signage? Is there marketing material in your optical? So all these things really matter. If it's quiet, if it's looking, like there's not a lot going on in terms of these different aspects in the optical, and you just have frames, I think it's hard for someone to connect, right? Connect the dots. So just make sure that you have at least some posters, some signage, and that the flow of the clinic makes sense. The next letter we're going to talk about is the L, so to lead with metrics. So we're talking about all these different ways that we're going to scale. But really, if there's one piece of advice I can give you, you have to start, and I think you all know this, you have to measure. So all you can do is start measuring something and it's going to grow. Like, if you start measuring a number, as soon as it goes down, you're not going to let it go down, right? You're going to let it maintain. If not, you're going to try to grow it. So there's something that happens to us psychologically when we start to track. And so you really need to have some measurements and some tracking mechanisms down, and you need to lead with metrics. So you have to measure, measuring awareness, not pressure. Metrics are not punishment. Metrics are visibility. So we get this sometimes where people feel like as soon as they're going to be tasked to a goal or a number, they fear it because, they don't want to fail. They think they're going to be punished if they don't meet it. Well, this is leadership, a leadership opportunity as well for you to coach and better have your employees understand that that's not the purpose of this. The purpose is, if you don't measure, you're just going to be spinning in the same circle every year. And so this is how the only way you can move in business is you have to be able to measure. And it's not a punishment tool. It's a guiding tool. It's a visibility tool because it gives us insights. It can give us opportunities to help, to coach. And I think a good thing to let people know is that, no one's perfect. We all have to learn from failures, and that's how we get better. And so getting uncomfortable, that feeling of not meeting your goal is a good thing. So that's what I try to tell our team. And you have to make sure you communicate that. So this isn't something like, Oh, you're 30% down, do better. If you come at somebody like that, they're not gonna respond well to that. They're not going to even care, and your numbers are going to drop. Versus a highly engaged employee will probably give you four times more, right? So think about it. We talk about scalability in terms of just a percentage growth, like 10%, year over year. But a human being can, exponentially, a good employee can exponentially grow your practice, right? So just keep that in mind. So when you are starting to measure, very, very important. And this becomes that KPI section to your practice. What are some goals and metrics that you're setting? So measuring care. So care should be visible, right? So how do we measure that? We have capture rates, we have premium lens adoption rates, we look at revenue per patient, maybe multiple pair, and so forth. So capture rate, for example, let's say you had 100 exams and 70 of them purchased. That's a capture rate. You have a capture rate of 70. So, often as an owner, you might be like, well, what happened to the other 30 patients, right? This is really not a blame situation, but it's a curiosity. So you want to be able to track it and find out, what is it? Are they leaving because they ran out of time? Are they leaving because they didn't have the funds? Are they leaving? You want to track it and you want them to be honest in their tracking because as soon as you put pressure on somebody, you're not going to get real data. They're going to find ways to, fib the data because they're nervous. And so I think it's really important that you use this to figure out what the true opportunities are in your practice and how can you strategically move the needle, right? And so metrics create awareness. You cannot coach what you can't see, right? So how do you go to tell somebody to improve? Oh, you need to do this, 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 unless there's some sort of outcome that you can visibly see and measure, right? And so that's why it's really, really important to track these things, track those metrics. And we're going to go over a little bit more about that towards the end. And so we talked about variation, location variation, or associate variation where there's performance gaps. Let's say associate A, was performing at 82%, associate B at 56, or location A was at 82, or location B was at 56. This is really good for you to see because then you can kind of figure out, what is the problem we need to solve. Is it a process problem? Is it, verbiage problem, a language problem? Is it a coaching problem? Is it a workflow problem? Is it an individual problem, that needs coaching? What is it? And so this is the kind of things that you can see, and it's going to help you move that needle in your practice towards that 100K optical. So now we're at the letter E from the scale method. And so E is to expand consistency. So once you have everything in place, that entire process that we mapped out earlier, now you're ready to scale. You can scale systems, right? You can't, not heroics. So growth becomes fragile when results depend on one leader, right? We talked about this. So if you are just trying to scale, one superstar into another superstar, it's not going to happen. This is why you need frameworks, processes. This is what we talk about systems, protocols. Then when you have them in place, now you're ready to scale, right? If you don't have them and let's say you try to expand, you're just going to expand chaos, right? You're going to expand chaos. You're going to burn out. Everything's going to start your customer service will drop. So this is why it's very important we think in terms of structure and we think in terms of processes, and this is how you scale. And so if a performance depends on, let's say, that one doctor in your clinic or one optician, one manager or one optician, the system has not scaled, right? You won't be able to get there. You will fail miserably. You're going to be, in the weeds, feeling burnout. Believe me, I can share. I've been there. And it's just not fun, right? And you start to blame. You think that your manager's at fault or this person's at fault. No, it's just you just didn't have a proper process or you didn't have a proper system in place, right? And so when we're talking about that, let's get back to that leadership dependency, right? So heroics don't scale. So really, that's when you're in the lane of you are the decision maker, you are the person running your clinic, we think of it, it's like owner-driven growth. You're constantly firefighting every single problem. You have inconsistent coaching, and you're really making decisions reactively. So I think it's really important. And I had a conversation with someone recently where I told her in her optical, I was giving her some advice. I said, you need to get out of the optical, like get your business, sales, and marketing up, but don't just keep running it and putting yourself in there. You have to pull yourself out a day or two. Pull yourself out a day or two so you can strategically plan for the future of your business. And that's how you're going to grow, right? So you can't have this leadership dependency all the time. You need to replicate your skill set with somebody else on your team for those decisions that you're making. All right, so how do we make this into practical knowledge? So before you all go home, I wanted to at least give you some tips on how to make that extra 100K this year, right? So we're not saying 100K, we're saying extra 100K. So extra 100K growth starts with a daily system. So in your mind, pick a date, a time you want to do an extra 100,000. Is it going to be in 6 months, do you think? Is it going to be in a year? Depending on your practice, put a timeline to it, right? And one way to think about it, when you look at the number, it seems so big, right? You're like, oh my God, 100K, you get kind of nervous in your mind. How am I going to do that? So a good way to think about this is to really just break it down. And when you break down your goal, you break it down to, let's say, 5 days a week. Sorry, I got one moment. You break it down for 5 days a week, you 50 weeks a year, 25 clinic days, that 100K comes down to $400 a day. So you're trying to find a way in your business opportunity, how can we create an extra $400,000 in value each day? I mean, we all can. We all see patients every day, right? So that's the beautiful gift is there's demand, right? We all have patients coming in the door. So what can we do more to grow this thing, right? So without spending extra marketing dollars, using the existing demand that's coming in, let's figure out some ways that we can do that. So here's where you can do it. And this is where, when you have that framework in place, you got to pick something. You got to pick a revenue item that you think you can work on. So here's an example. Is it a coding? Can you maybe think about some additional premium codings that you are offering to your patients? Maybe the opportunity might be $150 to $250, right? Think of breaking that number down. Maybe you need 2 to 3 people a day to additional to provide this enhanced vision package for them. That can help you get to that $400 a day, right? So you break it down into goals, into those conversations, and you set it as a human goal. How many people, right? It's easier to work that way than to work on percentages and things like that. It just doesn't equate. I find it's not successful in our practices when you talk about percentages and growths and things like that. People don't understand. They don't know what that means, where to move, how much to move. So break it down into an actual human number. Option two, second pair. Those are the easy ones, right? Like a second pair of glasses, that is probably going to bring in an additional 200, 400 to your practice. And so that's just having a simple discussion like, you know, second pair of computers, second pair of sun. How about occupational needs? So we go back to those lifestyle questions, right? And all you need is one of those extras a day. You can second pair sell based on whatever you're tracking right now, right? Metrics are important. Let's do an additional one more person that I can do that to. Now you've created an extra $100,000 in that year, right? So I would recommend picking something that you can work on. And number three might be a capture rate, right? And if you have a doctor in your day, let's say they're seeing 20 exams a day, moving that capture rate from 70 to 75% could be substantial, right? Now that's probably equated to 1 or 2 humans a day, an extra day, one or maybe half a human a day, that extra 5%. So you have to break it down into human numbers, right? One extra person is going to move my needle on my capture rate from 70 to 75, because we're all probably tracking that if we have doctors. So you have to think about it in terms of people, right? Like, how am I going to do that? Am I going to have a better conversation with the doctor to have a better handoff more effectively? Like, how are we going to do that? And yeah, and option number four is that stronger handoff. So that conversation. So how are you going to, what does that optical journey look like for the doctor? Can we have improved recommendations? We want to prevent those hesitations that are happening when the patient's coming to see us. So growth rarely, appears as one giant breakthrough. It's never really luck. And if it is luck, what goes up comes down rather quickly. But if you are consistent and pick something small, you will, and if you don't, give up and you consistently try to work at it day in day, those small little adjustments will add up so quickly over time, and you're going to feel so confident that you can do this, this business world, be successful on your own once you've proven success, right? Once you set a goal and you say you can do this, amazing things will start to happen. So it appears as dozens of small, really just repeatable improvements, right, over time. And imagine it just keeps getting better and better each time you repeat these processes with something new. So the compounding effect, right? So, okay, now you have these habits in place where you've created an additional, sale for that goal of yours for that $400 a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks per year, then you get that $100,000 of recurring revenue year after year, right? This isn't just a one time and it's stop. We're trying to grow the business up. So this is recurring revenue year over year. And so, again, it's not built through pressure. Hard sales, we know usually that doesn't really work too well, but it's just built through consistency. So small little efforts. So something that you have to align your team on in the morning. You're going to come together as a team. You're going to focus on one new project, at a time, and you're going to keep kicking at it, keep working with people, getting everybody to that elevated standard until you start seeing those results. And once you see it and it becomes a habit, you follow through. And then you repeat it again in 6 months to a year with another project, another revenue stream. So that's really what we do as a clinic. Okay, so systems at scale. So structure builds trust. So communication, look at your workflow, visibility, accountability. We've talked about that in the prior classes, and coaching as well. Okay, so now we're coming close to an end. So we're going to talk about Pulse IQ. So this is a software that I have that we use to track all of our business needs. And so this is single-handedly, I mean, it's giving me so many insights to our business that I didn't have before. Like, for example, contact lenses and ranking. I had no idea what my top contact lens performer was, and now I know. Just on a glance. I'm able to see how well we're doing this period versus our prior period, so 4 weeks before. I can also see how well I'm doing now versus last year. Am I up or down on a snapshot? These metrics are really important because if we are guiding in the red, if we're down, we'll know to pivot as a team. We'll know to hold somebody accountable to do something different because something's not working. So it's really, really important that you monitor those key metrics in your business and you have a tool to be able to do that. And so that's where Pulse IQ is handy. And so that's the business intelligence platform built for eye care practices. So it turns all your skater data into clear decisions. It can help your teams train smarter. There's coaches in there. There's an AI coach, and it can really help you start to grow and scale profitably. And so there's training in there that we've created. Any little thing. So these are small, bite-sized few minute videos. It has a worksheet and a multiple choice question. So even the basics, let's say you have a new onboarding hire, they got to train somewhere, right? So this is where you can get them consistently trained through the process. If there's anything you want to add extra on here, let us know. We can easily do these videos. They're not hard to make because they're through AI avatars. So it's been really, really beneficial. And what it does, it keeps your team aligned, right? So we're not having to have training sporadically done through different people. We can assign modules. You can use this as continuous training. Let's say someone forgot, Susie forgot. Susie's kind of not really good with front desk patients, right? She loses her temper. She's not really great. Okay, maybe it's been 6 months. Maybe you can revisit, how to handle a conflict. conflict resolution video. What are the skills? What are the steps you need to be able to do that, right? So there's natural things that we all tend to, even though you think we're trained, you think that we're going to be perfect, year on and year after year. It's not true. We always fall back to how we naturally are, right? And so this is where continuous training is really, really important so that you're upholding that standard and consistency across the board. And so this is kind of what our dashboard used to look like. Now it's way more advanced than this. We just keep growing this thing. But you can track, your important metrics, your conversion rates, your optical sales rates. You can see your top dispenser, things on your list that you don't use or not very successful. You can either choose to grow it or scrap it, right? So really good insights for you to use. So it helps you train smarter. You can set your own KPIs here. We have staff motivations and goal settings. So we have individual goals, location goals, and scorecards that are automatically sent out to your team members on a weekly basis. So now people will know how well they're performing. They're not guessing. They don't know. We're not having odd conversations. We're having clear expectations. And so if you'd like, you can take a QR code here and scan it. You'll get a free resource, and we can give you 2 free months to try the software. So you can go ahead and do that. It'll also be in your worksheet too. All right, and then we have, I believe this is going to be our last webinar closing out before summer. So the last one's going to be really good. So I'm going to make sure I put in all the little resources, texts, and tools that you can think of that's going to help you save your time in your practices. So that's going to be the last webinar, tying everything in together. So today was, putting everything we learned into place. Let's make you an extra $100,000. And then let's help you do that and save time through texts and tools. So the next webinar will be a lot of fun. I'll try to do some live demos of things that I've learned along the way. Claude has been a really good tool right now you can use. I recently, just sharing some insiders, I've recently used it to kind of do my website up again a little bit because I didn't know how to do WordPress. And so I've been using it, and it goes into my WordPress and changes it exactly how I want it to. So it's been pretty cool. So if you haven't been using Claude, I'm going to probably recommend it and share it on the next call too. But a lot of cool tools that we'll go through next week or next month, sorry. So that's it for today. Thank you all for joining. We have such a great, attendance. I'm so happy that you all are coming out to visit monthly. So as long as you show up, I'm here to help. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.